So I suppose this is a talk about OC and TIS3D and whatever, except I have no idea what to talk about. So the first question would probably be, are there any people here who kind of need to know or want to know anything specific about OC that hasn't been talked about by Payonel before? If yes, then we can pick that up as a topic and I can talk about that a bit. If not...
To be fair, his explanation was very, very good. So.
That's the point, yeah. So I don't think there's much to add on the, at least on the software side anyway. And on the hardware side, there were a few changes, but I think I covered most of that in the talk in last BTM. So, I mean, there's videos of that, and I think for most of it would be boring to just recap that. TIS-OC is just a lazy concatenation of TIS-3D and OC. So it's no deeper meaning behind that. Otherwise, we can talk about TIS-3D a bit. Yeah, right, just in chat. So if you have any questions, if there's anything at all you would like me to talk about, just write. So TIS-3D, do you know about that one? Because if you don't, that's the newer one of my two mods, which is kind of neat, I think. Okay, so... Nobody says anything. Say yes or no, please, anyone.
Can I ask a question?
Do you know it or not? It's too much effort to type what? The effort porting from 1.8 to 1.9, not that bad, actually.
I mean, from 1.7 to 1.8.
Yes, that was a pain, but exactly, mostly because of all the render changes. But from 1.8 to 1.9, that wasn't really that much effort. I mean, still, there were a few changes, obviously, but it wasn't that bad. The actual problem I kind of have now, or I feel I now have with OC, is that it has gone through so many ports for so many versions that there's a lot of code in there that is just old and uses mechanisms in sort of not the way you do them today. I mean, at the very moment, that's obviously capabilities. So everything now goes towards capabilities. So inventories, fluid handling, all that stuff. And I don't think everything in OC is updated to that yet, even. So that's one thing. But also in general, the networking is still kind of hacked together to work in the new network system with Netty. So that would probably need a rewrite. More or less, soonish. So just today, a player sent me a screenshot of the profiling of the screen initialization sent to the clients, and yeah, that should probably run in async mode and not synchronous. But yeah, so those are all the small problems that kind of pile up after a few ports, and those are kind of just annoying because it's not new stuff that you're building, it's just getting old stuff to run again in the way it already did before. Yeah, so that's it's kind of hard to get the motivation up for that after time. TIS-3D porting from, well, in general, porting from 1.9 to 1.10 is like no issue at all. I don't even think I had to change anything at all in TIS-3D except for the version number in the mcmod info file. Unless there's a core mod anywhere, I don't think in general that there's big issues there. OC2, yeah, so I suppose, I mean, I think there was a nope for the TIS-3D before, so I will go into that real quick. And I also have creative mode, haha, so I can build something if I find the tab. So TIS-3D is kind of a super low-level programming mod, so to say. So unlike open computers, where you have pretty much high-level stuff going on, let's pick a redstone. This is more of a better way of, or well, a different way of building what you usually do, perhaps with redstone circuitry. So the whole mod consists of two blocks, the controller block and the casing block. And yes, the programming is done in sort of assembly. So if you know the game TIS 100, it's very much inspired by that. I basically played that and thought, how would that work if it were in 3D? And this mod is basically the result of that thought. So what you have is you have a controller block and casing blocks, and you can arrange those casings in any way you wish. And on each face of a casing, you can slot in modules. And the most flexible one is the execution module, which can be used to run assembly code, basically. So the dialect of the assembly is pretty much the one used in TIS 100, the game, for which there's a manual that you can download somewhere. And it's also described in the in-game manual of the mod a bit. So, oh god, I don't even know the lingo myself anymore. But basically, what you do is what you do is program this. So there's a book that you can use the vanilla books, but as we all know, those are terrible to work with because you can't go back in your whatever you wrote. You have to delete everything to change something. So the mod has a alternative to that, which is also a book, but which has basically a much nicer code editor, which also does highlighting on errors and stuff. So on the left one here, I told it to just move the value. Oh, you have something down there. What? No, I don't want that. Let's use this there. And then, oh, now the screens will turn off. Whatever. Anyway, do that away. Do that away. So the execution module on the front will now just shove the value 3 to the right. And oops, and the one to the right will move whatever it reads from the left to below it. Now if we have a lever somewhere. So basically the whole thing runs sort of off redstone. Oh, thank you. As long as it has a signal, it turns on and it executes, and now the wire down here gets the value 3 as a signal strength from these two modules. And so basically using these assembly modules, you can write small programs which do control logic, which you usually do perhaps with either redstone, but rather large redstone contraptions, or perhaps using some small computer, but maybe that would be overkill. So this is kind of the middle ground for that. So yeah, that's that mod. There's also a few more modules. So there's modules for displaying stuff, for memory, for outputting audio signals, so basically the node block signals. Keypad for data input, an infrared module for sending packets over the air, and stuff like that. So yeah, that's the newer mod, and it's kind of compact, and I want to keep it that way, and particularly because porting is just so much easier when the mod is not super huge, like OC has grown. So this was really, I mean, I started it in 1.9, I think, and backported it to 1.7, but that was really no big effort at all. Versus updating OC from 1.7 to 1.8 was like a huge pain. So yeah, anyway, that's that. But I think I also mentioned that already in the last talk, so not much more to add here. So the second question somewhere, let's see. Someone wrote OC2 question. So yeah, there's currently some brainstorming going on as to kind of a spiritual successor of Open Computers, but I'm kind of hesitant to call it Open Computers 2, because from what I'm currently thinking, it will not be much like Open Computers in the way it works directly, because it will be more focused on lower level implementation. So it will kind of be fit in between TIS 3D and Open Computers, so to say. So basically the idea would be that the mod provides some kind of virtualization framework, and then add-ons on the mod itself provides components that run in this framework. So it's not like, okay, there's basically Lua, and then there's a hologram, and then you call a function and everything is dandy. And it's more like there's a data bus with actual, no, not Flask computers, with a data bus and an address bus, and you write basically values to a memory mapped region, and processors actually work the way they would in real world. So the first thing, for example, I would like to try and get to run on this framework is some older processor like an 8080 and see if that works. And if it does, then expand the framework to support more different processors, basically. Mm-hmm. And again, it would be pretty much multi-block focused, so it probably would be even more multi-block focused than Open Computers now, in the sense that, for example, RAM would also be a block which would connect to a data bus, which is just a cable then. And to encourage that, I would like to... I have to admit I never played with Raspberry 2 computers, but what I've read people talk about is that it kind of was like that, yeah. But basically, not only have one architecture, but multiple different architectures, and those all work together. Anyway, but to encourage that, I kind of would like to have some way to make it easier to remote control things. So right now, if you have Open Computers, and then you will have like your base, and then you have the reactor somewhere far off, so it doesn't explode in your base. If you want to control that, then you usually have a second computer at the reactor, and maybe have wireless networking or something like that. And with this, I'd kind of like to encourage having one central mainframe and have that control various things all over the world, and provide some ways of connecting that more easily. Among other things, to avoid having multiple computers in the world, which kind of tends to be not so good for performance anyway. So yeah, that's kind of my current thoughts. I have started a bit of coding. There's nothing really that I can show yet. There's nothing I've pushed to GitHub yet. It's more like, something between that, between OC and TIS. I also wanted to write some more, kind of library code, basically. So this comes again into the so common question: why does every modder have his own library? Well, it's mostly because people don't want to be dependent on other people's code. And it's the same for me, basically. So sure, there are other people who have written the libraries and made them open source and stuff, but it's often still small things that just don't seem intuitive to me, or maybe it's just a different way of thinking, and so it's easier to just write your own library. So that's just some basic fundamentals I've been working on recently, and those are kind of done now. So I've started prototyping some of the new mechanics, and it's already going much faster and easier if you don't have to write the same boilerplate code for every tile entity again and again, for example. So I think it's already been worth that time investment of writing that small library. And over the time, if that proves to be working well, I might even look into adjusting possibly Open Computers, more likely TIS 3D because it's not so massive. Also use some of these systems in that library then. So those include, on the one hand, basically a component system. So the main advantage of that is I've basically just from working with component systems in my day job, I've been getting used to the way of thinking with those. So it's not like you have entities and those extend stuff and those extend stuff. It's more of a composition-based system. So you have a location, and then you say, okay, and this also can interact with Redstone, and this is an inventory, and it's just a few classes that you plug together, and it magically works. And that makes things quite a bit easier. And the other big advantage is that it makes interacting from the server with the client easier if you have a common ID on the server and the client. So for entities in Minecraft, this is already the case because Minecraft itself tracks those entities. But for example, for tile entities, you always would have to go through the dimension and the coordinates of the tile entity to send something from the server to the client, which, for example, in OC, was a huge pain because of moving robots. So if there is enough lag, the server could send a packet of input for the TLT at that location. And then the server says, well, there is no tile entity here because the robot already moved. So I kind of had a system along those lines already. I'm glitching? Oh god.
Not anymore.
How bad is it?
Not.
How bad is it? Is it getting better?
Seems like it's fine again, for me at least.
Yeah. It's understandable though.
Okay. Okay. I'll just keep going. No, you restart something? You have to wait?
What is it then?
The restart murmur, I think.
Okay, I'll wait.
Yeah, let's wait. Meanwhile.
All right.
Oh, there we
People
go.
are coming back.
We're back.
Back in the room.
Mumble.
Awesome.
Everyone back? Everything better?
Sounds like it. So.
Good. Right. So what was I? All right. Yes. So that's the one part, and the other part is basically a system for making those easier to serialize, basically. So not having to write for each and every tile entity, you write in BT, read in BT with the tags and the shit and everything. So basically, I just have now a system where I put an attribute over a field, and then it automatically gets serialized. Which, of course, runs through reflection, but it's only for the reading and the writing, so it's pretty fast. It's fast enough, anyway, for now. We'll see when the next BTM happens and when it's ready for testing there, if it's still fast enough, but yeah. Anyway, so that's just some stuff to make life easier while writing the mods. So you just don't have that much friction while doing what you want to do. Yeah, anyway, so that's the prep work I've been doing, and now I've been prototyping a bit and implementing the basic bus systems, and now I'm dug out an old emulator for an 8080 I had lying around and trying to get that to run now. And when it does, we'll see. I'll probably push it to GitHub one of the other days and get some feedback from other people. And then we'll see where it goes from there. So that's the next up thing. But that's also the reason why I've been kind of quiet on the OC side recently, because actually most of the time I had that I still felt like coding in my free time, which has been getting less, went into that and not into OC. But we'll see how that will develop. I mean, I'm happy that, for example, Paonel now takes care of all the Lua side stuff now. That's a huge help. And Vexatos has been helpful in doing a few pull requests recently, so maybe he'll get more active in fixing stuff.
Please.
Anyway. So yeah, I totally didn't look in the chat. Any more questions? Questions. No, any more questions? Will I see with custom CPUs architecture support precompiled software in the future? Depending on the architecture, it already does. So I mean, for Lua, it probably never will, because the bytecode is, when compiled, can do evil things, and using the native libraries, those are the execution of the natives. Obviously, isn't itself sandbox, just the Lua that runs inside them. So loading bytecode in those would pretty much allow escaping the sandbox. So in Lua, no. But in other architectures, for example, the ARM ones and the MIPS one and whatever else there is, those basically run compiled code. So yes,
So if you can get like a binary file on there, you can run it.
Whoa.
Okay.
Essentially, if it's a binary file for that architecture, yes.
Oh,
There had to be at least one crash during this panel.
Of course.
If there wasn't a crash, something was wrong.
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we did have to restart Mumble, but
So you
But
mentioned
it isn't
that.
as real as in-game crashes.
I mentioned.
That you would have one central mainframe for the TIS. Would you be willing to share more about that?
All right. Well, that's more of a design goal for me, basically. Now I don't have any actual specific concepts of how to solve that. So how to make it easier to remote control stuff. I mean, the obvious easiest solution would be a peer-to-peer thing that just works remotely, magically, and allows you to connect stuff. The way I kind of hope it would work is that you have some way of binding actual displays to actual tablets right now that you carry around, but more like the remote terminals in OC, where you still communicate with the central system, but you can access it from pretty much anywhere, so that you don't feel like you have to walk back all the time if you need to test something. On the other end is obviously having stationary components that are somehow connected to the central system and can be controlled from there. But yeah, so the main idea is to have the whole system be a bit more blocky, but to avoid that being a pain in the ass, make it easier to access it and from anywhere and control anything anywhere.
Awesome.
Any more questions? Question, is the server back up?
Yes.
Yeah.
Ah. And I can log in again.
Game of Life is
What are the
still running.
available tools for like software, like ecosystem for like pulling in things from different sources? It seems like that that's been one of the things I've had on finding is a lot of third-party tools and programs people have written
For Lua or
for the Lua, so inside the virtual machine.
So I mean the main repository probably is open programs mainly just because OPPM exists and that pulls from that. So if people have any libraries they want to share, it's generally a good idea to put it on there, and that makes it a lot easier for people to load it in the game via OPPM.
I would suggest MPT as well.
As for other sources, I mean there is the forum, though. I mean, well, it's kind of slow going, I think, but it still exists and people post stuff there, so there's that. And as a not ultimately persistent source, but always a place where, well, you can ask if things exist or if someone knows something about it, is always IRC. So I think that's basically the main source of knowledge if you want to know anything about OC that isn't, generally OC that isn't documented anywhere. If you ask in OC, there's pretty much always someone there who will probably know an answer.
I had another question was on the implementation of the the graphics cards, the way the API from the Lua side transferring to the front end seems like in order to write any kind of like advanced user interface, like like a TurboVision. I remember back DOS days, I used to write TurboVision apps, and I've always wanted to kind of write a TurboVision sort of like IDE that would, like a Borland style IDE from inside of ComputerCraft. It seems like, or inside of open computers, seems like the interface ends up a lot of bandwidth in order to do anything, move or scroll or update the color of an area versus the text on it. Is there any advancements to those APIs planned?
So there's been, I mean, the first thing to say about the API as it currently stands is that the main design goal behind it was basically to make it hard to abuse actual network bandwidth by doing multiple writes or reads to the graphics card. And I think that works out pretty well, but at the cost of sometimes it being a bit of a hassle to get things to work easily the way you usually like to them to work. So as for reworks, there's been multiple discussions going on and multiple ideas. There's been, I think, 3 issues on GitHub that have been sort of merged into one now, with ideas for a different implementation of a graphics card. So I think the current state that is kind of the general favorite would work kind of in the way that there would be some kind of VRAM that, while writing to it as is, would not be ultimately that fast, but that then there should be shaders, so to say, that could run on the client side, and that would operate on the VRAM and manipulate that before it's actually getting rendered. So basically there would be a hard state, and that would be synchronized between server and client, but then that would also still be a processing step happening on the client, which would allow for very fast operations and very smooth animations and stuff like that, which would not persist ultimately, which would only happen on the client. And yeah, so that's basically the current more or less consensus, but I don't think anyone had actually started working on something like that yet. It's more of like the current concept that is kind of agreed upon, I think.
All right, thanks.
Any more questions?
Is there any difference between the different architectures from a programming perspective?
That depends on the architectures. In the Lua ones, not so much. There's a few differences between 5.2 and 5.3. In particular, in 5.3 there are a few more operations so there's the bitwise operations, which have extra operators now. So those didn't exist in 5.2. And those are particularly useful when doing, also when doing graphics operations. So this is, for example, why most of AC's demo programs used 5.3, because they use those operations. So when you do bit masking, for example, it's a lot easier and cleaner to write with 5.3, because you can just use those operators instead of having to use the bit library from 5.2. Also, it's faster than using the library, because operators are always faster than method calls. Yes, exactly. As for Lua versus other architectures, yes, of course, there's a much bigger difference. So the Lua architectures obviously only run Lua code, and those are interpreted pretty much high-level languages, while there are also some architectures which are much more low-level, and those run actual machine code, so to say. I mean, they're also interpreted or emulated, but it's the programs have to be actually compiled to work on those. What's my favorite thing that someone has done with OC, and what's something you'd like to see done that you know for sure is possible given what you've worked on for OC thus far? Additionally, what can we expect from OC in future updates? I think the favorite thing I've seen so far is still the in-game streaming that AC did and Greaser did for the last BTM. That was just mind-blowing for me. Because, I mean, I also fell into this preconception that the screens are kind of not super fast, but I've just accepted it because the network bandwidth limitations and not wanting to break those. And then seeing something like that was pretty awesome. Wanting to see something not done? I don't think I've seen people use drones to do anything very large, massive scale yet. So that would be kind of interesting to see if someone could automate a complete factory of that. If that's already been done, I've not seen it yet. If someone has a link, that would be awesome. And what can we expect in the future? I'm actually not super sure. Among other things, because I've kind of have too much fun thinking about and working on, let's call it OC2. So I'm sure what I would definitely like to get done is, just cleanup essentially. So what I mentioned before, moving more stuff to using capabilities as they should, rewriting parts of the network code to work better and faster, stuff like that. And hopefully one day the long discussed and talked about graphics card update thing. What kind of open computers projects can you recommend for people new to programming? So basically, you mean what tasks to set themselves for programming something? I mean, what I call the hello world of Minecraft or computer mods in Minecraft is basically a big reactor control program. So those have been done like sand on the beach. But anyway, other than that, I think generally robot automation is something that's very nice for getting started because it's so visual and you get immediate feedback. So if you tell your robot to move forward, it moves forward and you just see that happening. So I think that's, while it takes a few of the more advanced components in the mod, it's still one of the most relatable things to program for in the mod. Is there any chance of seeing a client-side sort of screen for demos to reduce network use? So, kind of, if the graphics card implementation changes would allow for that. I mean, if the client-side, let's call it shaders, would be powerful enough to do that, then yes, that would definitely be possible. I think the main limitation on those will be that they just can't run for very long because, well, they have to be done in reasonable time for the frame time to not drop and the rendering time not to get terrible. And yes, so they would probably not be in Lua. They'd probably some kind of super simple assembly thing, language, whatever, with a custom interpreter. Transfer the programs. Okay, yeah, so no, the idea would not be to have the Lua programs run on the client, but to have something else running there. That would be easier to control, because for now, so the Lua sandboxing basically works by hooks in Lua. So Lua has debug hooks, which are called, for example, every 10,000 operations or whatever. And that's what OC uses to regularly check if the time limit has exceeded. And that would be, in my opinion, much too broad to work well in the rendering loop. Well, it probably wouldn't be GLSL. It's probably something much simpler, but we'll see. I mean, it also depends on who does it and how much time will be spent on it. Yeah. That would be, so as for the data, as I mentioned, that probably would be like one block of VRAM, which would actually be the hard memory, and that would be transferred to the client, yes, but it would not be modified as is on the client. The client would just do changes or operations based on that. And the VRAM probably, well, I don't know, maybe, could also contain, if it's some sort of custom bytecode interpreter, the actual shader programs. Or maybe that's a separate slot of memory, I don't know, we'll see. The sound card, yeah, that's pretty neat. I saw a quick demo. So is it still in the OC booth? So if you haven't seen it yet, in the OC booth, there's demos of pretty much everything. And there's also, so that, instructions. I don't know how that works in the backend, I have no idea. If that is how it works, then sure, I guess.
I was going to just add a little mention in here. If people are curious about how the shader model kind of works, so they understand it, there's a bunch of really nice tools on the web, like Shader Toy and like that give you the mindset to understand how they would work. So if you're interested in going that route, not off topic.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, Shader Toy is a pretty great site. It's pretty impressive what people do with shaders alone. All right. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about? So yeah, anyway, I probably will throw out a release candidate of 1.6 finally this weekend. It's totally not like I wanted to have it released last BTM. No. You misheard there. But yeah, I probably will throw out a release candidate of 1.6 of LC this weekend, and if nothing terrible breaks anymore, I'll throw out the final release next weekend so that finally that gets out. It's been in development for way too long. How hard bad idea-ish would it be to add a CPU architecture supporting JVM bytecode? Depends on how fast you want it to run. But if you run it slow enough so it doesn't bog down the server, I mean, why not? Could be interesting. I mean, I don't know how well. I mean, the JVM also obviously would have to have some hooks for how memory is allocated. So I guess you could hook into those to limit that. Yeah, I mean, sure, have fun. How level the hardware will be microcontroller transistors. So for the OC2 thing, I guess it would be pretty low level for now, I guess. So the current concepts are like it's just the bus where you actually write to fixed addresses, and there's not yet anyway, no protocol for high level data. So that's one of the things I do kind of want to get in there, that there's at least some standardized protocols. So for example, if there does need to be an extra Lua architecture again, and it doesn't run, or we can't get it to run on any of the other architectures, triple sandboxing. Anyway, so if that becomes necessary, then it would be nice to have some sort of protocol running on that bus, so that people, when implementing their components, don't have to go that deep, because I guess that would be quite well deterring for some people. Because I mean, and I would perfectly understand that. So you don't always want to write, okay, so I now have that serial data and I need to read 3 more bytes, then I know how much I have to return. But if there's a reset signal, then I have to. That's not something you want to do usually. So that need to be some kind of high-level protocol defining, okay, if I provide this method, then all of the stuff happens behind the curtains for you. So what was the actual question? Right, high level. So yeah, so the actual components by the mod itself would be relatively low level, and the systems behind the curtains, but I hope there to be some API for relatively high-level interaction too, just for usability for add-ons and stuff. Was that for me? I don't know. And teleporting. PCI bridges. I don't know. I have no idea. For now, I basically just have a very low-level bus, and it's one bus, and everything runs through that. We'll see how much we have to expand that, what other systems will have to come for that. I'll probably throw up a repository on GitHub, I don't know, maybe next month or so. If you have any ideas or concerns or whatever, then by all means open issues there and let me know whatever you think might be necessary, would be a good idea, would not be a good idea on there then. Or before that, just talk to me on RC.
Is the build steps for getting open computers to compile and set up and contribute code difficult or documented?
I think it's documented in the README and in the repository itself. It should not. It should. Big should not be too hard. Basically, it should be clone the repository and then run the general Gradle steps for setting up the environment. So, what is it? Gradle set up decomp workspace and Gradle whatever your IDE is. So IDEA or Eclipse, and that should be it. Actually, so that should be all you have to do to start working on Open Computers itself.
And then like the Gradle or Clip, or not Gradle, Clips or other IDEs, they'll just launch Minecraft.
You can run it from inside the IDE. So running those tasks, those Gradle tasks, will set up the run configurations in the IDE, and then you can just select them there. So there's, for example, in IDEA, the IntelliJ IDEA, there's then the Minecraft client and Minecraft server configurations, and you just select those and hit run or debug, and then it'll start that with the mod in it. And you can test and everything. There's a few small gotchas. Let me check the repository real quick to see. I think it's documented. Boom, 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 boom. Scrolling all the way down. Yeah, exactly. So on the actual site of the repository, let's see. I can probably link this here, right? Oops. So there. There's all the information you basically need to get it to run, including a few extra command line parameters you might want to add if you have, for example, other mods in your development environment which rely on the simple component system, which uses the class transformer, which has to be passed via the command line for the Forge system to find it and load it. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, and apparently IDEA is even smart enough to just load it itself now, so you don't even need the second step there. Good to know. If I didn't miss anything, I think there are no more questions. If there are, please write them again, because then I missed them. Otherwise, thanks for, well, hearing me talk about this and that with no actual plan. Or was it actually an hour? No, it can't have been.
Since we were behind schedule, it was a little bit less than an hour.
Yeah, there we go. So for, I don't know, 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And yeah, have fun at the remaining panels and at BTM.